Estou em guerra. O céu não é meu. Estou em guerra. O mar não é meu. Estou em guerra. E a vida só se conquista com a morte. Na esperança de recuperar o meu mar.
The people of East Timor are still living with their violent past. This is the village of Swai, where more than 3 years ago Indonesian soldiers and militiamen murdered 3 priests and dozens of civilians. It was retribution for wanting their independence.
Today's Eucharist is to honor and in remembrance of those who died here in Swai, our beloved fallen heroes of East Timor's hard-fought freedom and independence.
The man they look to lead them away from their past is Xanana Gusmao. It's a role he never wanted, a one-time poet and writer forced to take up the gun in defence of his people. And now a president who must help East Timor to confront its tragic history.
What they want that people must realize was that it was the price of our freedom. This is why I try always to say, don't cry. Be proud. Be proud of them.
There's scarcely a family here who didn't lose someone in the struggle for independence. It's a loss that's still hard to comprehend.
I think that's what he sees his role as being, as calling people to account, as I said before, reminding them of what was sacrificed to be able to reach this moment and to keep those values and principles of the struggle.
It was the remarkable defiance of this tiny country which first drew me in more than 20 years ago. I've been following the progress of East Timor and its charismatic leader ever since. To those of us outside the country, Xanana Gusmao used to be an almost mythical figure. Unseen in the mountains, leading the fight against Indonesian troops. Today he's the peacetime president of a country facing challenges as formidable as any in the past. For centuries, East Timor was a forgotten corner of Portugal's colonial empire. But in 1975, as Portugal prepared to leave, Xanana Gusmao was among a handful of intellectuals who experienced a political awakening.
Although under the colonial power we always talked about why we are colonized, why we are not independent, etc. After Portugal gave us freedom to choose, freedom of choice, we started to not to believe in ourselves.
The political landscape fragmented. Parties based on tribal loyalties took up arms against each other. A brief civil war followed, which left the radical pro-independence party Fretilin in control of the country. A few weeks later, East Timor's neighbour, Indonesia, launched a full-scale invasion.
Do you think in some ways the Timorese are partly to blame themselves for the Indonesian invasion, for being invaded?
In part, yes.
The occupation was brutal. The population fled to the mountains, and a small guerrilla army began a desperate fight against the invaders. Tens of thousands lost their lives to the Indonesian onslaught. Xanana was among the few commanders to survive. He reorganized the resistance, and by the early 1980s, he symbolized Indonesia's failure to control East Timor.
At that time, you can't even mention Xanana's name. You can't even mention Fretilins. The military will come and kill you, arrest you and kill you.
José Ramos Horta was one of a small number of Fretilin leaders who left before the invasion, seeking international support. He saw in Xanana an inspirational figure to keep East Timor's cause alive.
First, we got information, feedback from the church about how Xanana was doing, how the resistance was doing, but we received also his writings. And in reading his writings, I was very impressed. It was at that moment that I personally designed a strategy to promote Xanana, to introduce him to the powers that be, starting with the Portuguese, the Solidarity movement, so that they realize that they are dealing here with a real leader and not just some illiterate individual who is fighting in the bush with no vision, no clear mind and strategy.
Outnumbered and completely isolated, the guerrillas knew they couldn't win this war. Xanana's strategy was simply to deny the Indonesians victory.
When
we were guerrillas fighting in the jungle, conditions were awful. We had nothing. But the problems made us united. We knew we had one goal. We chose it freely, and we knew the sacrifices we'd have to make. So we were all united.
Sometimes my guerrillas felt very sad when we killed Indonesian boys. Very, very young people. They said, wow, what kind of war is this?
The resistance chose Xanana as leader because he was a natural. He had the potential. He understood the guerrillas. He was naturally sympathetic, not just to the guerrillas, but the people as well.
And one day, I was crying too much, and people came to me. Soldiers, commanders came to me, and they respect my sorrow. After that, they asked to have a meeting. I said, okay. You know what they said to me? Please, brother, do you know what is your job? Your task? Take care of us. I took a lesson from guerrillas, from soldiers, illiterate people. Your task now is to take care of us. If not, we will die.
In 1992, Xanana's luck ran out. He was captured and sentenced to life in Indonesia's top security prison. It was, it seemed, a fatal blow to the resistance. But contrary to Jakarta's hopes, Xanana didn't waver. Instead, his role as an icon strengthened. They started calling him East Timor's Mandela. In prison, he maintained his links through a network of Timorese students and sympathizers, including an Australian activist, later to become his wife.
There were times when I had my doubts. It worried me a lot that we weren't able to put the relationship to the test, just the test of sort of daily life together. And of course, for many years, we really had no idea whether Xanana would serve the full 20 years of his sentence or not. So, many people paint it today as this kind of fairy tale romance, and it's actually far from the truth. It was extremely difficult.
Xanana played the model prisoner. He captained the football team and got along with his jailers. But in secret, he continued to lead the independence movement.
It was all via correspondence. We got far more sophisticated technologically as time went by. We smuggled a mobile phone into the prison in the middle of 1995, which meant that even when I had to make a run for it out of Indonesia and return to Australia, we were able to maintain very regular contact.
She sent me a mobile. I could talk to Ramos Horta. I say, wow, the environment. Yes, the environment was the prison.
It also, of course, had huge benefits in terms of the struggle. It facilitated the communication with East Timor, with the guerrillas that Xanana led from the prison.
Yes, the environment was the prison, but we could manage, and it was only a question of time.
The turning point came in May 1998. Economic collapse brought chaos to the streets of Indonesia's cities. The Suharto regime crumbled. Desperately in need of international approval, the new government offered East Timor a referendum, and they allowed access to its most famous political prisoner.
And he called our office and I picked up the phone and he didn't say anything, but he's just laughing. And I know his voice and he said that we are independent now.
In 1999, the United Nations arrived to supervise the referendum. Suddenly, for the first time, the East Timorese were given a chance to decide their own future. Almost the entire adult population turned out to vote. Now they could show off their support for independence. But the Indonesian military made it clear that choice would bring with it massive retribution. The result was no surprise, nor was the response of the army-backed militia groups. The people voted overwhelmingly for independence, and the Indonesian army began a systematic campaign of killing and destruction. In just 2 weeks, they laid waste to the entire country. More than half the population was uprooted. East Timor would begin its independence at year zero. Xanana was released from prison and returned with a UN-backed intervention force. He found a population in tears, a country in ruins.
I cannot imagine the challenges we have to face. Simply devastated.
Everywhere he was greeted as a saviour. He pleaded to be allowed to retire, but the pressure was too great.
As the time came closer, we realised that he wasn't going to be able to avoid his fate.
In spite of his many protests, last year Xanana Gusmao was elected by a landslide as his country's first president. Today, his home up above the capital, Dili, is Xanana's refuge from the pressures of government. He's a father of 2 young boys now, though he gets little time with them.
It's ironic, but probably Xanana and I, when he was in prison, had more time to communicate on a personal level and about, non-practical matters than we do today.
At the age of 56, Xanana has spent half his life fighting in the mountains or in prison. But even now, he's not a free man.
I imagine when he's up in the hills in his house, how much goes through his mind about the burden, the responsibilities, the incredible expectations of everybody.
This vegetable plot is his pride and joy. Xanana's always said he'd rather be a pumpkin farmer than a president. For the moment, that's just a dream. People are demanding better lives, and they want their president's help.
Today's problems are much bigger than yesterday's.
Yes, bigger. During the struggle, when we meet these people, we say we have to liberate our country. We must accept all sacrifices, and people accept. Now, when we talk to them, be patient. We say, wow, what kind of patience they must? I already lost all the patience. They need improvement.
And very fast.
Very fast.
The improvements aren't coming fast enough. The people are demanding jobs in a country with almost no economy. In a dramatic gesture of solidarity, Xanana has established his presidential palace in the burnt ruins of an old office building. He has little formal power under the new constitution, but great moral authority. Xanana wants to use that authority to be what he calls the voice of the people, listening to their complaints and challenging the government's performance. In practice, his influence can be decisive.
He reads item by item. He analyzes the bill or whatever is sent to him.
He can basically either make or break any kind of government decision.
Yes, exactly. He said, no, sorry, I'm not signing this. I don't agree with it, as he has done before.
That much power can be dangerous in a new and fragile democracy, and Xanana still seems unsure how he should use it.
I think he's in flux. I think he's having a hard time finding out which one he is. He wasn't a Democrat during the resistance struggle, and so we can't expect him to turn into one in 3 years.
The influence of the president brings dozens of visitors to his door every day. But it's also causing friction with his old comrades in Fretilin, who now run the government.
I think that the cooperation between the president and the government is getting better and better. I need Xanana to understand the whole process, and this is our obligation to get him understanding the difficulties.
Out here in the village of Motakik, the difficulties are all too obvious. Even in the rainy season, the soil supports very few crops. Life is as hard as it's ever been. The village had an agricultural research centre, built by the Indonesians in an attempt to win hearts and minds. But as they pulled out, they destroyed it. When I came here last year, the village head was still waiting for government assistance to rebuild the centre. He's still waiting.
Banyak pejabat yang sudah turun ke sini tapi tidak.
Many officials came here, but they didn't give us any real information. They made lots of promises, and the promises never materialized.
Begitu tepat.
3.5 years after liberation, the lives of many East Timorese have improved very little. They've lost confidence in the government, but not in their president.
Saya kira untuk rakyat Timor Leste itu pada umumnya mereka tetap.
Most people in East Timor still like Xanana.
Leader yang mereka.
Xanana is a leader they admire. He's the only one we can all trust. I'm afraid the community doesn't feel they can trust the other leaders.
Kalau seperti yang lain-lain, saya kira masyarakat belum bisa percaya.
The frustration boiled over last December. Rioting broke out in the capital. A mob attacked the parliament, smashed foreign-owned businesses, and burnt down a house owned by the Prime Minister. The spark which ignited the riots was an angry speech by Xanana accusing his old party, Fretilin, of abusing its power. The independence movement he'd once led was now split over how to run the country.
Obviously, Xanana was speaking his mind, and he was reflecting probably the frustration of many other people. But as a president, knowing the constraints the government face, his speech should be to temper, to calm down those frustrations rather than exacerbate them.
I think in the pre-December 4th period, maybe Xanana's language was much angrier with government than it needed to be. And I think post-December 4th, he's realized the power that he can have in creating unhappiness and frustration with government institutions. So I think he's working to do something about that now.
Progress is especially hard in a country still in the shadow of its past. Balide prison in Dili stands as a reminder of the many cruelties of Indonesia's occupation. It used to be a torture centre. The messages of defiance written on the walls by its inmates have been carefully preserved as a memorial to what took place here. Isabel Guterres works here for the Commission of Truth and Reconciliation, which is dedicated to helping the people of East Timor come to terms with their history.
For some, they are really deep scars, they are still carried. For some people, they still like unresolved business. People still also want to know why this happened to them. Why did their father was taken away, or the brother was killed, or the husband were disappeared? So they want to know that. What's the reason?
The grief is still very raw, and the people want justice before all the victims are buried and forgotten. So these remains from the Swai massacre have been examined by forensic experts to help track down the perpetrators. But even as he consoles and comforts them, their president takes a very different stand. He believes it's time for East Timor to move on.
So people should leave all of this in the past?
I believe so. They will. Now they are expecting. Years later, nobody will remember. If we, the state, government, we do our jobs, giving new conditions to the people, nobody will, and they will be proud.
Perhaps he's right. But for the moment, it seems too much to expect that the people of East Timor can forget all of this.
Maybe as a president, I guess, he has higher point of view. Maybe it's also easy for someone like President Xanana to really move on. But for ordinary people that, daily they just, try to survive. As I say, people are tolerant, people are forgiving. But again, I just say that, this tolerance also has limits. The patience has limits.
Many people will not like this statement. Many NGOs trying to keep alive the wounds. And I always say, keeping alive the wounds, you will not cure the trauma.
Without justice, though, the wounds may never heal. The generals who planned the destruction of East Timor are unrepentant and so far untouched, despite indictments against them by East Timor's Serious Crimes Unit. Xanana argues that they should be left alone.
I think Xanana is always forward-looking when it comes to East Timor's place in the world. With a neighbor like Indonesia, you'd always have to be thinking about how to make that relationship better, and one way to make it better is not to start prosecuting their top generals.
It's a practical and unusually forgiving approach, but one that baffles even Xanana's staunchest allies. On the issue of justice, he now finds himself out of step with his people.
Timorese just need simple things, justice, that's all. In some part, I don't agree with Xanana. For example, he said that international tribunal is not priority for East Timorese and reconciliation is important for us. Maybe that is true if Xanana say like that, but I can say that it is very big mistakes for the people who just let the perpetrators go free and continue the crimes against humanity.
It's difficult to understand such depths of forgiveness in a country which has suffered so much.
Xanana as a human being, he doesn't seem to harbour any grudges, have any kind of trauma whatsoever about the past. I don't know how to explain that, except that he, has an amazing strength of character.
Few countries have paid such a heavy price for their independence. Yet Xanana seems strangely untouched by all the years of hardship. A match with the new national football team and a rare break from the burdens of office. Xanana is having fun. His charisma seems to affect everyone around him.
He's destined always to be a leader, you think?
Yes, absolutely, because he's still very young. Look at Mandela, 80 and they're still going strong. And so Xanana will have at least 20 years or more to go.
I do worry about him in terms of his physical health. He's not a young man. He smokes very heavily. He doesn't have a healthy lifestyle at all. He's a perfect candidate for a stroke, really.
He's always said that guerrilla fighters make bad presidents. But his extraordinary rapport with the people of East Timor have made him into a national icon, seemingly impossible to replace.
Do you want to retire?
I need to write. No, I need. Sometimes I tell myself, what I could give, I already gave. I have also the right to be myself, to do what I want, maybe to try to paint again, and try to write something, to be myself.
After a lifetime of duty and sacrifice, it seems a reasonable request. Xanana Gusmao wants time off from the struggle to enjoy himself.
Do you think you've given enough already?
I was ready to die if it was necessary.
Okay. No roads lead into the camps of East Timor's guerrilla army. For the men and women who've spent their lives fighting Indonesian rule, survival depends on staying hidden in the mountainous heart of their country. They've been cut off from the rest of the world for nearly a quarter of a century. The The forests of East Timor provide their food, their shelter, and even their weapons. Young recruits have to earn the right to carry a real rifle. The guns and uniforms of the more experienced fighters have to be captured from the Indonesian army, sometimes at great cost. Thousands of their comrades in arms have died during their lonely campaign for independence. This ragtag army for the past 24 years has conducted one of the most extraordinary David and Goliath struggles the world has ever seen. Without any outside assistance, they've held out against the full might of the Indonesian military. But now they face a more complex challenge: to build a new nation that includes not just those who support them, but also their enemies. Today, the guerrillas are preparing to meet a United Nations delegation to discuss the referendum on East Timor's future. It's their first face-to-face contact with the international community, and they want to make a good impression. But making concessions to the Indonesians, after so much bloodshed, is clearly going to be more difficult.
We're ready to talk about disarmament and peace with the Indonesians, but we're not going to lay down our weapons until they pull their troops out of our country.
The arrival of the UN helicopter is an emotional moment, a sign that at last the world has started to care about their struggle, that their isolation is about to end. But their hopes may be too high. The UN has a very limited mandate in East Timor. It's supposed to persuade the rebels to start disarming, while Indonesia's forces remain in the territory. Rebel commanders want guarantees of security for the East Timorese people that the UN cannot give. As they talk, people in the camp who've known little but war wait for news of peace. Some have lived through years of almost unimaginable hardship in the mountains. They find it difficult to believe in any other kind of life. "We need Valentil to look after us in the future," says this woman. "Maybe my son will also have to be a fighter when he grows up." Perhaps she's wise. The UN has just a month left to organise a referendum which is still fraught with difficulties. Behind the old-fashioned military courtesies, it's promising very little. But the East Timorese rebels find it hard not to see the UN as a saviour. After decades of international neglect, they're convinced the winds of change are finally blowing their way. Jonathan Head, BBC News, in the mountains of East Timor.